So today is the day we're finally gonna take the suspension off the car and give our GR86 some welcome upgrades. We're not going crazy in this phase of the suspension. We've got some Eibach lowering springs and we have our old SPC camber bolts that I bought a while back, but I haven't had on there due to autocross rules. We're gonna put those back on as well. And we also have a pair of OEM Toyota mud guards or rock guards for the car. We're gonna slap those on while we're in there, and hopefully this transforms the look of the car. So up until this point, we've been driving the GR86 in pretty much stock form. We have the Borla catback exhaust. If you haven't seen that video, click the link or the card up above to visit that video and check out the Borla exhaust. But we have the exhaust on the car. We've got OEM Toyota crash bolts or camber bolts on the car. We have the Cusco pedal cover, which we installed a while back. And of course, for track duty, we have Hawk DTC 60 brake pads and ATE Type 200 fluid, so the brakes will survive on the track. But other than that, the car is pretty much stock. The OEM PS4 tires, which are actually really good to my surprise. Stock wheels, of course. And we spent a lot of time racing the car just to kind of get baselines of where the car sits from a performance perspective and just for my own curiosity and having fun with it in stock form. Take a quick look at what we have before we start with the installation, but obviously our Eibach Pro Kit lowering springs. These claim to lower the car in the front about 1 inch and in the rear about 1.5 inches. So that's our front spring, I'm presuming, and our rear spring right here. And we have our SPC camber bolts, which we'll use to dial in some more camber for the car for track duty. And the OEM Toyota splash guards or mud guards, rock guards, whatever you want to call them. And the reason I got these guys is, one, I do kind of like the way they look on the car. They break up the color with the black mud guards, but also they prevent rock chipping along the side skirts or the rocker panels, because these cars do kick up a lot of rocks if you have sticky tires, but that is a concern, so these should help out with that. So we'll start by disassembling the front shock. You'll notice I marked the top hat on here with an F, marking towards the front. And it doesn't really make that big of a deal because these top hats do spin, but I like to just put it back the way it came out, just in case. And you're gonna want a spring compressor tool. It looks like this, has these little arms on it with a bolt down the middle, and it slides up and down and allows you to compress the spring. You do want this tool because doing this job without one can be pretty dangerous. You can pick up one of these kits at your local auto store and actually rent them, or you can buy one. I'll try to put the link in the description. But I've bought one many years ago, so I have it because I've done this so many times. But we're gonna line these things up like that and then start cranking down on the bolts to squeeze the spring together. That should be good to keep the spring from launching anything away from it when we loosen up the top nut here. And the tool you want for this, again, I'll try to put links in the description, but is one of these ratcheting wrenches like this that is hollow in the center. So you can stick an Allen key through it to hold the Allen nuts or the Allen bolt on top of the shaft. However, I don't have the right size for that one. I have it for the back strut, but not the front. So you can improvise using a socket like this and putting a vice grip on it, and then having the Allen key on something like this. What we can do is stick it on there and then slip the Allen key in there like that. And then that way we can loosen the bolt without damaging the shaft. And you'll notice it turns pretty easily. These aren't torqued very tight. In fact, they just bottom out. So once you get it going, it should start getting easier as we get away from spring pressure. We'll see. There we go. Released just a little bit, but still safe. Got our nuts, got our top hat with the bearing inside. This is actually pretty cool. I don't think the old cars had that if I remember right, but nice bearing for the top hat. Pull our shock out the back here. So there's our OEM struts. Set that shock aside and release our spring. So there's our two springs, the OEM one versus the Eibach. Go ahead and throw this one aside. And before we put the spring on, we actually need to modify the bump stop. The Eibach instructions have you cut off the bottom ring here on the bump stop. That way we can maintain our travel. So just grab like a razor blade like this one, set it down here, and it's pretty easy to kind of saw away at it. Try to make an even cut all the way around as best you can. It's soft and squishy, so it's not a huge deal if you don't get it cut perfectly straight. There's the other piece we cut off. Set that aside, and we can put this back onto our shock shaft along with our dust boots. Now the Eibach spring, it goes on to the shock with the Eibach logo facing upwards, so towards the top of the shock. So we're gonna grab our spring compressor and compress this guy down. Okay, we'll try to see if we can get the shock shaft to fit at this length. Looks pretty close, maybe a little more. So what we need to do is have enough room or clearance between where the shock shaft shelf is right here, because that's where this little part will sit. We need to make sure we line up the spring on the rubber in the same way that it came off. There's a little indentation in the rubber. Looks about right. So that will seat kind of like that. Hopefully we can get this stuff all on there. That worked out pretty good. Take your nut, drop it down on top. Once we get the nut started, grab our custom made little tool here. Start screwing it in until you need to use the Allen key, which looks like that's right about now. And you basically want to tighten this down until the bolt bottoms out. And you want to make sure that the top hat on the spring perch here gets down into the shelf on the shock shaft just right. So usually it's just wiggling it around and making sure it snaps into place. All right, looks like the bolt is snugged up. What it does is it just bottoms out. There's no specific torque, or there probably is, but if you just get it good and tight, since it's bottomed out. All right, should be good. Get these things off of here. We'll do the same thing for the rear shock. The rear is actually a little bit easier. With just a little bit of compression, we've got the spring loose on the shock body. So we should be good. We can take our proper tool for taking this off and remove the top nut. The rear bump stop gets cut just like the front one does. Here's our Eibach rear spring compared to the OEM spring, much more coils. So we'll orient the Eibach logo so that it's facing upwards, and there's very little spring compression you need to do with the rear. In fact, I think we might be able to get away without doing any at all. So we'll get the spring on there, get our dust boots, make sure the top hat is aligned with where the spring indent is. Yeah, we don't need to do any spring compressing here because we can access our bolts. Get our nut placed on top. Make sure the spring is aligned in the lower perch on the little detent there, and then same for the top. And obviously we want the nuts on the top, or the bolts on the top, to line up with the hole on the bottom. So you will need to twist this to get it proper. Then we can start putting it back together. Okay, so that nut will bottom out as well, just get it nice and snug. So everything goes back together in the reverse order it came out, obviously. We're gonna take the front shock and send it up through the bottom. All right, so we're all done with the suspension. We have the iBox springs installed. We have the SBC camber bolts installed and the camber maxed out on the front. Now we're gonna change gears and get the mud guards installed on the front and the back. They're super easy. It takes like 3 or 4 minutes per side, but we'll show you exactly what you need to do to get those on. Then we can get the car lowered off the quick jack and take it for a spin. Take your mud guard labeled for the right side, passenger side. Looks like this. There's 2 holes on the front. These are actually gonna go right where these 2 clips are. And then the hole on the bottom, we're actually gonna mark with a Sharpie. Basically, we're gonna line this up on here and then mark our hole on the underside and then drill a little 1/8 inch hole for the screw on the bottom. But first we're gonna take these clips out. You have 3 screw backing clips in your kit. We're gonna take the 2 larger ones and place them behind these holes. The large one goes on the bottom, the medium-sized one goes on the top. So peel away your fender liner there. Squeeze this guy back in there. And this is what it should look like when those are installed. And what we can do is get this guy up here, grab a couple of your screws, screw him in place temporarily. You do kind of want to snug it up so that way everything is tight and you know where it's going to fit. So you drill the bottom hole in the appropriate place. And then for our hole on the underside, you can see it's right there. Push this guy up in position, mark the hole. We'll pop this guy back off, drill the hole, and put the other clip on the bottom. Grab your little bitty clip. We're gonna slide that on the bottom side here. There we go, we're lining up the hole, obviously with the one that we just drilled. All right, we'll go ahead and install it for the final time. Take our last screw up through the bottom. On this one, we're actually gonna drill 2 holes into this little trim piece, or body piece, I should say. We fit the mudguard up into place, make sure it's in a good snug position. Grab your Sharpie and mark your holes. We'll do those ones, and there's one other on the bottom as well, but we're gonna drill, use your small drill bit for the ones in the bumper panel. The larger hole back here is a little bit tricky to get to. Let's see if we can get the drill in here. So grab your 2 little bolt retainers, just like in the front, it uses 2 of the tiny ones. So we'll slip those over the body panel and the holes. And then what I'm gonna do is get this one, again, screwed into place here temporarily. Now with that mocked up, we can go ahead and drill the hole for the bottom one here. Since it's fitting pretty snug in the corner here, I'm just gonna go ahead and drill right through it. All right, now we can actually just pop our clips in the remaining 2 larger holes. All right, everything's done. We've got the car back on the ground. Let's take a closer look at it here. So we definitely lost some of the flushness when we added more camber. So I think when we go to a 225 tire, that should bring that out a little bit and be a little bit more flush. We can always look at wider spacers, but looks pretty sweet. I like the level of the drop. It's not too low, it's not too high like it was before. Yeah, I like it. I like the little flare that the mud guards bring. So next step is getting it out on the road and seeing how it feels, and we'll get some shots out in the daylight as well. But let's jump in the car. I'm anxious to try this stuff out. So it's been about a week of driving on the Springs. I didn't want to do an initial impression right after installing them because driving around my neighborhood, everything is pretty smooth and the roads here in Phoenix are really good anyways. So I drove it around during the week, commuting to work, going to various tasks and errands and all kinds of stuff like that around town to get a better impression of these Springs and how they feel in regular everyday driving. Now for normal everyday driving on good roads, so again, I have to stress that I live in Phoenix where there's no snow or bad weather, so the roads are really good here, really flat, really smooth for the most part. But for this type of driving and these types of roads, these Springs feel like you're on the OEM suspension with OEM springs. They're not stiff by any means or jarring like some Springs are when you put them on stock struts. So overall, really soft, really smooth, and compliant ride. Now, where these Springs don't excel are on bumps. So because you're lowering the car, you're reducing the amount of suspension travel on the struts with the shorter spring, obviously. There is a lot larger likelihood that these things are going to bottom out and you're going to be bouncing off the bump stops and that kind of thing. So once again, not a big deal if you have flat, smooth roads like we do here in Phoenix, but if you live in like Denver, where I came from, or a place that has snowy weather and potholes and imperfections in the road, these probably are not going to be the best option for you. That said, for the price, for $350, they're kind of hard to beat if you're just looking to lower your car and you can deal with the roughness of the ride if you do live in a bad area with bad roads. Thanks again, everybody, for watching. I appreciate you hanging out with me. If you have any thoughts, comments, or questions, like always, leave them down below in the comments. I would love to hear from you. If you haven't subscribed to the channel just yet, consider doing that as well. I'd love to see you in the future. Stay safe out there. I am checking out. We'll talk to you all next time.